Hi everybody, it's Joe Cioffi. It's a Wednesday coming up on 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time here in my neck of the woods for April 18th, 2018, as weather conditions continue to be really chilly around here. It's ridiculous. We should be up on most days between 60 and 65. Most areas today barely made it out of the low 50s, and I'm getting tired of it. I think I said that earlier. I think a lot of people are starting to get a little bit weary. At least we did have some sun, although there were in and out clouds all day, and in some places more clouds than others, but at least going into this evening, we seem to have partially cleared out in my neck of the woods. We don't have too much happening across the United States, but we do have one area of interest, and before I get to that, I just want to say hi to Sebastian, to Timothy Veltman. Delvin is on. Good to see you, Charles Baker. Yeah, you're so right. On the LIE, that's a great line. Leaving a space in front of you is a sign of weakness. Yeah, I can understand that. I drive that every day. I'm amazed. I had somebody today. Now, I was doing... I was in the HOV lane, which was, during the allowed time as a single driver, and I usually try to keep it under between 65 and 70 when I'm moving along. And I had somebody in a vehicle behind me just literally come right at me, almost to my bumper, before he discovered that apparently I wasn't driving fast enough for him, and then decides to weave out of the HOV lane in a completely illegal way. And because, I guess he was so important that traffic rules don't apply to him. I don't understand it. I really don't. But now you've got me sidetracked. But that was very funny. James in North Belmore, Kevin Francis, ZUK 416B. Hi there, and Franklin Taylor. Good to see you here from the beautiful state of Arkansas. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening, starting off with an area that apparently is the victim of snow this month. This is the way the Northeast was during the month of March. And when we pull out the radar at the moment, you can see a solid area on the national radar covering the Midwest, southern Wisconsin, northern northeastern Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, getting snow again. And this is going to be nothing like the blizzard, but still, having just had record snowfall, to have it happen again within a matter of a couple of days is just not a nice thing, and it needs to go away. But right now, as we look at the watches and warnings map, not again relatively quiet nationwide. There's just that one area of winter storm warnings up in northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, and into parts of southwestern Wisconsin. Winter weather advisories extending east from there, going into parts of southeastern Michigan, but staying north of Chicago. But Milwaukee is in the winter weather advisory. Also, this is all staying south of Green Bay, which got hit very hard from the storm from over the weekend. Red flag warnings flying in the southwest again, and in parts of northwest Texas and into western Oklahoma because of the very dry conditions that we're seeing there. And we've got various special weather statements and freeze watches and that kind of thing throughout some areas in the southern Appalachians because of the extent of the cold air and the fact that the growing season has allegedly begun. Pretty quiet out in the western part of the U.S. As things are calm for the time being, and we're going to jump right off to the enhanced satellite view and the surface map so you can take a look at this next weather system. The low that you see up in New Brunswick is the remnants of the storm from the weekend, and as a result, it creates a limited amount of space for this next weather system that's coming out of the Midwest to do anything. So as it swings eastward, it's not going to be any big storm by any measure, but it is going to make for some rather gray and raw conditions for some, but not all of my area for Thursday into Thursday night. Basically, I think from, say, central New Jersey, much of eastern and northeastern Pennsylvania, north and east, into southeastern New York and through southern New England are going to see a cold rain out of this. And there might be some mixed precip on the northern fringe. I'm just not really all that worked up about it. Most of the liquid precip amounts were generally under a half an inch, and in a lot of places even under a quarter of an inch. So this is really more of a minor nuisance than anything else. But it is going to lead to what should be some decent weather for this weekend and into the first part of next week. We don't have any particularly big weather systems in the west, although some high-level moisture is coming into the west here, and you can see it on the enhanced satellite view. And there is a bit of a low out to the west of the north coast of California that's moving eastward, and we'll take a look at what that's going to bring with respect to the weather in just a second. So as far as severe weather goes, that is quiet too. There's not only no severe weather today, but here's something you don't see too often this time of year in what is usually severe weather season. But this is no organized severe thunderstorms forecast, and actually only 2 small areas of thunderstorms have been added. Earlier this map was completely empty, but now they've added for the overnight a small area in western Oregon and into northwestern California, and also a small area in southern Ohio, northeastern Kentucky. The northern part of this, the low is actually going to go just across northern Indiana, northern Ohio, and into Pennsylvania. So there's, you know, the ever so slightly small warm sector that develops, and I suppose that, you know, you could see an isolated pop-up downpour or a thunderstorm that forms in there. So the Storm Prediction Center covering for that, but no severe weather to speak of, and we may not see any severe weather pop up for a couple of days. It may not be until maybe Friday night into Saturday that we'll start to see some areas get into some severe weather again. So let's go to the weather models of the GFS and take a look at what's happening. We need some relative calmness, so I'm not really too upset over the fact that there are no storms running around. I think that's a good thing. And we'll start with tonight. Before that, just want to acknowledge Kendall Bailey. Thank you for your kind words. Gary Rivard, more snow tonight in Michigan. I'm really ready to throw in the towel. Yeah, I think a lot of us are, and many of us already have. Good hi to Robert Russo, to Stephen Franco, David Schwartz, William Huber, and also nice 80 degrees needs to come back to Newark. Not anytime soon. When I looked out at the long range, you know, it's not too hopeful. The odd warm day here and there, yes, but in terms of anything sustained, not gonna, you know, not gonna happen. Probably through the end of the month into the first part of May. So here's the low that's coming eastward, and again, you know, the low goes into southern Pennsylvania, redevelops off the New Jersey coast. You can see there's some light precip with that, and then it begins to pull away to the northeast, and we start to get a nice high that builds in on Friday, and high pressure is just going to pretty much dominate the pattern in the eastern part of the United States, because we do have a blocky signature, but we're going to be in a good spot here. So I think we'll have some sunshine starting Friday and lasting into Monday of next week before weather conditions start to become a bit more questionable. Here's the next weather system in the west, by the way, as we'll back it up. It moves, the energy moves inland and then goes east of the Rockies and starts to drop moisture down and from northwest Texas northward. So the areas that are dry might have the hope here for some rain here later Friday night, and perhaps there could be some heavier thunderstorms or isolated severe thunderstorms that could break out in this. And as we go eastward from there, you start to get into some rain and maybe some severe weather across the south on Saturday night and again on Sunday. But notice that high moves up into western New York and just kind of controls things and keeps things dry and chilling in the northeast. but it also is suppressing that low across the south. So that low actually goes pretty far south, and I think the weather's going to be pretty good for me, at least through Monday. Meanwhile, you got another system that comes into the northwest and brings some snow up into the northern Rockies. So at this point, we're into Monday night, early Tuesday, and while there's rain up into the Carolinas, it is dry over me. I'm happy because that will be day 2 of my fishing trip, so it'll be 2 out of 3 days that at least so far the weather will look good for. And going forward, I think it's a question of whether this all gets suppressed. I don't have enough of the new GFS run, so I can go back 1 model run cycle. And it does eventually lift this up to the northeast and up the east coast to bring some rain and wind here Tuesday night next week into Wednesday. But the timing on this is pretty questionable. There's a lot of things that are going to be going on in the upper atmosphere early next week that will need to be watched closely with regards to this. And what I'm referring to is the upper air and the timing. So let me illustrate here. See if I got that window where I can bring up my paint box, and then, you know, I can show you a few other things here. Let's see, where'd it go? Okay, so the window, here we go. Let me get rid of this. And we'll bring this up again. Let's try that one more time. Hang on, folks. That's your little chat box there. But I want to bring up, now I can bring up the paint box. Awesome. Okay, so here's the situation with regards to next week. First off, let me go back to the upper air as we go through the weekend. So what we have is we have a split flow. There are 2 flows in the atmosphere, 2 streams of upper air winds. You've got a northern jet that goes across northern Canada and basically sets up, you know, this dry, chilly flow that you see here. We could bring it in use a different color here. What stands out? So we'll use the yellow. So we have this dry, chilly air that's coming down from eastern Canada into the northeast. The southern part of the split is where the energy is, and this is this system that is moving across the south. You can see it here. That's the system in the southern part of the jet stream that's moving along and at a slower pace, taking its time, moving across. That northern jet is being kept in place by this blocky low that's sitting out in, I just drew it in the purple circle, that's over east of Newfoundland, so between Newfoundland and the southern tip of Greenland. So with that upper low there, it kind of locks a dry, northerly, chilly flow into the northeast. At least it's dry and we'll have some sunshine, and if the sun is out, it does make things feel better, but still below average temperatures. And speaking of below average temperatures, I just want to show you the look of the temperatures in the eastern part of the country through April 25th, and it's really cold. I mean, except for above average temperatures for much of Florida except the northern part, which will be near normal, and slightly above average temperatures along the immediate Gulf Coast. Virtually everybody east of the Rockies is going to be below average in terms of temperatures over the next 7 days. So that carries us through the middle part of next week, and it is quite likely, looking at this model and a few other things, that we could be like this through the end of the month and through the beginning of May. Isn't that just lovely? Okay, so let's go back now to where we're going as we go into next week. The upper low that's east of Newfoundland is going to get out of the way, and as a result, you're going to wind up with, let me just make sure everything's working right, because I'm doing something off the side of the screen. I just want to make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, and it appears that you are. Okay, so as we go into next week, that southern energy is going to, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to get kicked out straight to the east by northern energy that's dropping down, and you can see it, you know, where I have it indicated, the northern energy stream. You know, that's this trough that I just highlighted in the yellow. That's dropping down. Now, it could either kick that system out, the southern system, out to the east, or it can try to dig a little southward and lift it up the coast. And it seems like the models, which were kind of leaning toward the idea of maybe kicking it out, or perhaps kicking it out to the northeast where it was offshore, but not by far, now seem to want to go to the route where it's going to want to try to take this southern energy and lift it up northward, so that a surface low will probably try and develop along the coast and then move northward up the east coast. Now, or just offshore. It doesn't, at the moment, look like it's anything too strong. It would probably wind up being some wind and some rain, but entirely manageable, and this would be for the middle part of next week. But I just think there's a lot of variables here that are in play that I have to, you know, kind of work out in terms of the next 4 or 5 days. So I'm not really too sold on anything at the moment on how this is all going to play out. But at least I think that through tomorrow, you know, we get whatever we get tomorrow in terms of a chilly rain and a pretty damp, dismal day, which we've gotten so many of. And then after that, we will hopefully dry things out rather nicely. Here's the visible satellite loop, and you can see clouds up in upstate New York and through New England. We just got into some nice clear skies in southern areas of New York State, southern areas of Connecticut, down to Long Island, New Jersey, and through the mid-Atlantic states. And you can just begin to see the clouds coming in from the west back through parts of westernmost Pennsylvania and into Ohio as the next weather system moves right along. I'll come back at this point now to our friendly neighborhood GFS model and see where we're going to move this along. So I think we're back to the, okay, so this is the earlier run, and here's where the earlier run lifted it up the coast, and I imagine that the current run will do the same before the low sort of meanders its way out to the east, and another front at some point as we go right at the very end of the month, and on it goes. I mean, I just don't see anything that says sustained warmth into the eastern part of the U.S. Now, off to Euroland. Why don't we take a look and see what's happening there, because somebody's enjoying some warm spring weather, and it looks like most of Europe and into England and Ireland are seeing it, although there is some rain for tonight just off the coast of Ireland and Scotland, and that lifts northward, but virtually all of Europe and England and Ireland, except for a few isolated spots, looks good for Thursday and for a good chunk of Friday. And even into the weekend, not too bad. Some rain showers come into the British Isles over the weekend, but other than that, it looks okay. You start to see a couple of fronts moving across Europe Monday into Tuesday, and then the action starts to pick up a little bit as we move toward the end of the month with more frequent weather systems. So it may start getting a little bit more active, but at least in terms of temperatures for you folks, the temperature profile, let's see, do we have I could look at the weeklies, and this at least will give us a temperature profile if I can find one. It may not be available for this, and it looks like it's not. Let me just go back one run. No, it's not available for Europe. I took a shot. Sorry, folks. We can at least see the temperature anomalies from the standpoint of the GFS, though, over the next 7 days. And again, everybody's above average here, starting with the present time through Friday. And as we roll through Sunday, we still above average temperatures, which is nice. You start to get a few pockets of below average temperatures showing up as we move into the first part of next week. But much of southwestern Europe, down through the Mediterranean, all seeing above average temperatures, a little bit cooler than average over parts of Ireland and the northern half of England and Scotland. Again, this would be into early next week. So until then, you've got some relative warmth. I strongly urge that you enjoy it in case it changes in a radical sort of way. What we wouldn't give here for some prolonged, I'd take 60s. I mean, just 60s every day would be such a nice change from this pattern that we have been stuck in. And it's just really, it's driving me crazy. All right, folks, I'm going to come back to the chat board here. Give me 1 second to straighten this out. I'm doing a little maneuvering here. Okay, so there you are, and okay, we're good to go. So I'm just gonna take a look and see what you folks have to say. More snow in Michigan, Kendall Bailey, at least for the southeastern part of the state. Franklin Taylor, La Nina Pacific conditions are not traditionally conducive to warm springs in the eastern part of the U.S. Correct, and that La Nina is waning to almost neutral now, so it's almost, you know, whatever is happening is probably just some sort of residual leftover stuff from the La Nina. But also, I think that we're still probably working off that big polar vortex split that occurred back in late February. So that could be another reason why things have been so chilly, is that that may have not finished. Maybe the bulk of it has played itself out, but there is probably still some residual impact with that. And yeah, David Schwartz, from what I've seen, the La Nina has gone fairly neutral, and that's probably the basis of the one of the basis of the Hurricane Center forecast, by the way, which is for slightly above average activity with a neutral, no La Nina, no El Nino, just a neutral Pacific water temperature outlook. And on the Atlantic, they did point out that water temperatures off the east coast of the United States are above average, but water temperatures in the eastern Atlantic are below average. And would that I'd love to get Judah Cohen on here, but he's a very busy man and he's very difficult to get to. But maybe one of these days I will. Once when I have some time, folks, I'd love to. I want to be able to set this up where I can have guests on, and it would be great. So once I can have some time to figure that out, I will start having some guests. I can actually do that on my Facebook Lives. When I'm doing them from the phone, I actually can bring guests now on at the same time. But we hasn't quite gotten to YouTube yet. But I imagine that it might, because usually what one does, the other follows. Is it possible, Pallet wants to know, is it possible there is an effect coming from ash from the recent erupting volcanoes? You know what, I don't think that's the case. It might be a bit too soon for that, but the volcanic activity has increased, but I don't think it's enough. It certainly, I don't think it's been enough to impact the weather, certainly on the in the short term. I wouldn't also call it a year without a spring, because typically I think people have this sort of romantic notion that spring is supposed to be some amazingly beautiful year where it's sunny every day and flowers are just constantly blooming, and it's just not the case in at least in the Northeast. Maybe in some parts of the country it is, but in the Northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states with that cold ocean, that is not the case. And we'll see if these chillier than average temperatures continue well into the month of May, because as I said, this is really getting on my nerves. And 75 days to hurricane season, except that it's 60 days to hurricane season, or actually, I'm sorry, no, it's less than 75 days. ZEUK hurricane season starts, what am I saying? You're taking me back to March now. Hurricane season starts in 43 days in the Atlantic, and it starts in 28 days in the Pacific, in the Eastern Pacific. So we're getting there in terms of getting closer to the warmer months of the year. We just kind of have to be patient and work ourselves through this very chilly pattern that we've been in. And Ray C, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, the cool weather is staying around for a while, and as I said, I looked at some of the longer range climate models are suggesting that we will see cooler than average temperatures through the end of the month and probably into the first week or so of May. And after that, how reliable is it's anyone's guess. And the dandelions start to show. My dandelions are already out. They just needed to get enough sun and those warm temperatures on Friday and Saturday, and that did the trick. So at least from that standpoint, things are doing what they're supposed to do. What they're supposed to do. One of the consequences of a cold spring, by the way, is that the spring blooming season tends to be very long. And I've got a weeping cherry in front of my house that in most years it's done blooming by now. It has barely started to bloom, and it's really taking its time for those blooms to open up. And I'm kind of enjoying it because it's a beautiful tree. And oftentimes the blooms would only last for a day or two and then done. But this year it looks like they may actually hang around for a while. All right, folks, we're going to leave it at that. It's a quiet weather pattern for a change, which I think is a nice switch. You can't have big storms and major storms running around all of the time, so it's nice that we're getting a bit of a break. Be advised that when things are calm, I may take a little time off. I appreciate a few people. I didn't do a live stream yesterday because I had my hands full with a few things, but I also wanted a break from it, and I did get a couple of messages asking if I was all right. Yes, everything's fine. I'm perfectly okay. I just took a break, and I've got a fishing trip planned for early next week. I will live stream from some of my fishing adventures though, and I'm going to probably keep my live streaming to a minimum in terms of doing the weather stuff, unless it looks like we're going to have something important. But I'll bring my equipment with me, so I'll be. A lot of times, you guys know me by now. A lot of times I say I'm not going to do it, and I still wind up doing it. I'll see how I feel when I get up into northern Connecticut. In the meantime, just check out the latest website posts on meteorologistjoecioffi.com. And Angry Ben has all the New York City weather covered on nycweathernow.com. And if you want Long Island weather, you can go to weatherlongisland.com. Have a great evening, everybody. Be well, and we will see you tomorrow. And there's no Joe and Joe show tonight on Facebook. It's me, and I may or may not do it. So because Joe's got the day off today. So we'll be back tomorrow at 9:15, and I'll decide later on if I feel up to it. I'll do a short one on Facebook by myself. I don't like to do it without Joe. We've gotten used to doing this show together, so it kind of feels a little weird doing it without him. But I must carry on. Have a great evening.